videos from other facilities. And unfortunately, we had that whole issue of not being able to look at the YouTube videos. So Adam, yay, worked his magic and legally downloaded videos on YouTube.
There are videos for college.
No, they're Oakland Zoo videos, so it's great. But that allowed me to put them on the computer and show them to you today. So yesterday we were talking more about using targets and kind of different ways to use targets, and my original plan was to finish that up yesterday, but I wanted to show just a couple of videos of working with Stormy and this amazing progression that she's made over the years, and then sort of talk more about stations, targets used as stations, and the different ways to do that. So this was, and for those of you that have been involved in the training, please feel free to chime in at any time. Again, this isn't really a presentation. The idea is for discussion, and so it's mostly features Alicia doing the training, and this one was from 2013. So, I'm sure if I was to ask you what is the #1 trait of a good trainer, I hope many of you would say patience, and I think this really exemplifies that. So I just want to sort of show you this of kind of where it started off. Okay. So you can see she's moving into the hand, which is essentially a target. Again, anything can be a target. It's just a point of reference that the animal always moves towards. And the idea here is to get some hip movement in. And you can see she's got the shoulder movement going on pretty well. Oh, I had certain time points that aren't showing up. Okay, so in this case, the target that's really in use is the hand target on the shoulder and then a nose target. But there's not a hip target that's in use here. So I just kind of wanted to give you that for a starting point. And I had all these lovely time points marked to be efficient, but it looks like for some reason I'm not seeing it here.
In case you guys missed that, the full goal was to get a hip all the way up against the fence line for body tactile. So she's offering the shoulder, but it's getting the hip.
Margaret, I think if you put your cursor over the timeline, it'll show you a time.
Oh, yeah, there. Okay, thank you. All right, so now beginning to introduce the hip target, but you can see Stormy, the zebra, is pretty afraid of it, which is not a huge surprise. All right, so you can see there's a bit of fear response.
Also, Alicia implemented a log, if you guys can see it on the ground, to help get the body to line up a little bit more to make the hip reachable. It's like a little shoot.
So she starts in the front of the body at the shoulder where Stormy knows to target into it, and she's quite comfortable. And you can see she's giving a really nice shoulder present there.
moving farther down the belly. So she's actually poking her now more in the ribs than just in the shoulder.
Hello, in the commissary, please.
Go ahead.
Hey Sam, Monica just asked one of the nurses to contact me. There's something at the bird barn.
And what you see, the response is really still to, as if it's a shoulder target, so she's not actually, so she's not really understanding yet to bring the hip in, but still giving that really good shoulder response, which, as you'll see, and probably even today, is still a really strong behavioral response. All right, so now we're 3 years later from the first one. And in an effort to begin to kick her head, so right now, you know, if this is Stormy, her head's here, we're trying to get the hip to move in this way, right? So she's not really understanding to move in towards that hip target just yet. So in an effort to not just think about the hip, and this is where using targets can be really helpful, and just kind of modifying how you use them a little bit. The idea was to use the head target to move her head, oh, the fence is here, I'm the zebra, move the head target away a little bit with the idea that it might kick the hip in. And so a lot of times when I work with two targets on a behavior like a lean in or a side present, I might manipulate how the head goes, moving it forward or backwards or away a little bit in an effort to just get that slight movement of taking a step or leaning or shifting the weight, something like that, towards the body target that I'm trying to teach. In this case, it would be the hip. So the idea was, and you'll see in the videos, the head target's used to move the head like kind of a little bit further away from the fence with the idea that it might begin to give an opportunity to reinforce the hip from coming in. For coming in, not from coming in. Oh yeah.
Margaret, is that usually with the intention or the hope of phasing the head target out at some point?
No right answer. A lot of times, yeah. You know, so again, just like with the lean in behavior, I might train it to lean in as a cue. This would be the hip target. But if there was some reason that I wanted their head to be in a very specific place in association with the lean in, then I would present the head target with the lean in cue, so that I need your nose right here for reason X, Y, or Z. You know, it might be if you have some sort of husbandry opening, you're doing a blood draw from the neck, and maybe you don't have all the cables like what we have here, you might want to position animal in a particular place so that you can reach in through a husbandry opening or an opening that the hyenas presenting the leg kind of comes to mind as that too. Like we're trying to get one of the hyenas to reach her leg through, or his leg, sorry, extend it all the way through with the idea of being able to do blood pressure training. So we might need to have his nose in a particular place that then facilitates lining his arm up to bring the foot all the way through. So that would be a time where I would keep the nose target,
Okay.
because I need that nose right here.
Right, okay.
But generally, you know, I think most of us want to be able to phase out the targets because it just becomes cumbersome carrying them around. So you might convert it to a hand signal, but then if you need the target, you can always use it. It's not a bad thing.
I really like all the different angles.
Yeah, where was this popped up?
This is on the fence post where the cables meet the chain link to the elephant gate.
Yes. Ah, that's not what I wanted to show. I must be looking at the wrong one. Okay, so here you'll see she's using the head target to walk the Z. Oh, that's not the one I'm using. I went to the wrong time point. Never mind.
And that was the start of trying to do the same thing on the opposite side. It was a totally brand new behavior to do the same thing on the other side of the zebra.
Which was completely different from Moki, who it was not a brand new behavior for her. She was able to generalize it, which I think was surprising to everyone. But she was able to be like, oh, the same crap over here? Okay.
I mean the same fun stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah. This is just the way she does it. She's like, oh, fine.
I found that in prey animals, you pretty much have to train each side, and it does help. But they are one-sided, just like us, so they usually do better on one side. But with horses, we train, everything on both sides, kind of at the same time, so it's not just, like people typically mount on the left side. But if you have to train them to mount on both sides, that kind of thing. And handling their feet is the same thing. And then you probably have to do it more on their off side, just to desensitize them more.
And yeah, I think that just the notion of even training with prey animals is such a different place for your starting point. I mean, it's, you have to be so cautious because their job is to stay alive and run away at scary things. And they often perceive us as the predator. So, I think it's an excellent point of like looking at how the animal perceives us and how we can reduce that notion that we're the predator.
And the hind ends are the hardest, because that's obviously their engine to get away from the predators, to push off and go. So having anything, this is true in domestic horses, it's pretty major to desensitize them for their hind end work, for cleaning house, channels, that kind of thing.
And I always say that people who can train those really skittish hoof stock are my heroes. It's amazing. And I often think back to all those times at Dallas when we were doing so much. Okay, so now I hope you'll see her using the head target to kind of move the hip away. And so once you kind of experiment with being able to move the head away a little bit, the idea would be to then incorporate, along with the head target, a second target for the body. And well, so this actually might serve as an example as well. Oh, stare down with the camera. Yeah, look at face. So the idea would be you're sort of taking that head target, maybe bumping it out a little bit, which would then allow you to lift the hip target. And in this case, the hip target either hasn't been introduced. I mean, I know it's been introduced because we saw it in earlier videos, but hasn't been introduced in this context. But this would be, when you're using the head target this way, you would then want to begin using that hip target as the head target's used to position the hip a little, like right there. That would be a perfect time to present the hip target. Did you see how she kind of swings in like that? Now it might still be scary at this point in time, but that's the idea. Okay, so here you're gonna see a really nice response. Even though it's kind of a stomp, it's still a really great move into the hip target and a perfect time to apply a jackpot. And then this is the last of the Stormy videos, and just sort of to show you where it's gotten to. Tracking Alicia's hairstyle a little here.
Good.
Wow.
And that's with her bad side.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the opposite side. Her righty side was trained first, her left side was trained second. And that kicking was actually, we ended up capturing that as part of the hip target and kind of using the pole to almost annoy her to the point of kicking at it. And then we captured that step and then faded out the kicking.
Wow.
So I thought it would be good to just kind of look at that whole series, and also, I mean, one, you know, it's I think a great example of some patience, working through several different ways of using the tools, and some trial and error, and what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. You know, I'm sure if the primary trainers who have been working with these guys for a long time started talking about the different ways that these two females that, you know, we have and have taken so far at this point, they learn differently, and flexibility in how we use the tools. So I just kind of wanted to show you that series of things and then open it up for any discussion. I have a couple of more, and this is all Oakland Zoo Video Day, so you know, anything that anybody has to add in or comment on, but really just sort of looking at how we use the targets.
I do have one thing that I think we attempted to do and worked on with Alicia and Amber was it seemed like Alicia was making some really great progress with Stormy, but the progress was almost always associated with a bit of a tenseness. So even though she was making progress, it was kind of this really tense target, or this tense progress. So I remember at one point, I don't remember what point during the timeline, we scaled back the aggressive progress we were trying to make and focused more on just chill, and then kind of went back into making progress in sort of like a chill kind of vein. And I think that really helped, because I remember seeing how Stormy was doing everything, but then always that sort of like gritting her teeth, kind of, I'm doing it, and then it sort of, we were able to kind of fade that out a bit.
Paying really close attention to reinforcing relaxation. Yeah.
I think it eventually took a really fine combination with both zebras, and they were a little bit different, but between spending a good amount of time working that body touch, you know, from head to body, but then also breaking it up with the easier things too, because it was like, I wasn't breaking it up enough, and Alicia was breaking it up too much, and then by the end we had this like happy medium of, you know, spend that time doing it, but break it up when you need to. I think that was when we really got a lot of forward momentum.
I think my favorite thing about teaching both of them that hip step in, it was really good to remember that that very simple thing for almost anything else, and especially us, was really hard for them because they don't really sidestep with their back legs naturally very often. So it was just, for them, it was just not a natural movement to do. And the challenge of, it was really hard, and I could tell Alicia, I think, got a little frustrated sometimes with, she made so much progress with the shoulder and all the way down the belly, and like, we were doing the right steps, doing all the things, and just hit this block and just could not get it. And so, you know, looking at different options, trying all kinds of different things, and remembering that sometimes things worked up to a point, and and you gotta think of something new. But it was great that we eventually got it.
Taking the kick with it was a brave move, and then being able to take the kick out later that's impressive. Like, and you don't get to see that at the end video, in the impressive video that we all saw not too long ago, so I'm glad we're having this discussion because that's a layer of complexity that I would have never known you guys had to work through. But allowing, like bridging the kick, that was probably not an easy decision.
And it was definitely a timing thing too, because of course we weren't trying to get the kick, but that step down and that slight movement. So it definitely became a game of exactly when do you bridge, and bridging for the lower intensity movements and looking for the shifts and all that. It was definitely hard. Props to Alicia and Stacy for getting that because it was so important.
Yeah, and we would get the kick and then kind of the like real hard bounce. Like there was always a little bit of like the way I was describing where she's like, fine, like this kind of, they're a little bit frustrated and they're going to show you that they're a little bit frustrated with a little bit of a stomp or something. But as long as it was, you know, just a little tension, it was exactly what you needed to capture. You weren't going to get the movement a different way ultimately. And we were concerned, oh, are we going to be able to take it out? It was easy to take it out. Yeah.
And I don't remember, did we get, I think we got Moki's hip in first.
Yeah.
And that I think happened actually in our medical stall first before it happened on exhibit?
It was happening simultaneously. Okay. It got really strong in the medical stall because she seemed to really enjoy bouncing the hip into the straw bale. Like, yes, I'm hitting the straw bale just like you want me to. And it got really strong in the medical barn, and then it also then was able to get stronger on exhibit. And with Moki, it was more of a, I taught her the difference between touch and you hold still and lean, and you lean into me. And then we did that all the way down the body. And we got the same, you know, aggravated, oh no, you're touching my rear end and I'm a prey species. But to capture just the right movement in, and then eventually when they realize that's what you want, it's simple enough to, they stop kicking. It's easy. They make it easy for you at that point.
Something I find helpful when training hoof stock is to reward them with their heads low. Because a relaxed hoof stock will have its head low. So right here, she's up high, which is an alert position, you know, like maybe a stress position. So when I reward, I always reward low. And then what that has led mostly is having animals awaiting their reward put their heads low, which helps them be calm and, you know, less, because the higher their head, the more alert, and because that's an alert, you know, stressful position. So when I start with my rewarding, even if it's just basic, you know, we're just targeting, it's always in the same place and it's always low. And then what you can find is that there will just, when they get in the training mode, it's a relaxation also, so that they can be more calm and think a little bit better than if their head's low or high. So I don't know if that would help, but that's how I train my stock, including my horse, who you'll find with their head as low as possible. Because that's another, you know, a posture that she'll adopt, and knowing that we're going to do training.
Well, Liz, adding to that in itself, in the current position, it creates tension along her top line and her whole back. So if she is already down, it might make her more flexible to offer more movement-based positions.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really good point.
And we actually did try that method, like Leslie was talking about, trying to have like just calm, reinforcing sessions. And we found that it didn't really seem to help very much. She moved out of position more often. And on top of that, I think that she maybe couldn't see us quite as well and see what we were doing. So I think she liked being up and being able to be like, what are you doing back there? What's going on? And it was something that I think somebody got the idea from somebody else, and we did try it. But for our particular zebras, we didn't find it as advantageous.
I don't think I ever tried it with Moki, because I'm like, whoa, what a cool idea, So I do not think I tried it with her, but Moki tends to kind of watch too, at least with the blood draw, but it would certainly be something you could do for other behaviors and working foot behaviors, and that would make perfect sense. So, yeah.
And it's certainly a good gauge if they are relaxed, that they're willing to assume that position, even if you need them to put their head up for some other behavior, or they want to look up every now and again, but as long as they're willing to relax.
One last thing, and I can save Paul this time, is that we also discovered with these guys the power of jackpotting. And it didn't have to be a big end of session jackpot, but when we did get that stomp and we were able to bridge for the right movement, a whole handful of cookies right in the face was really, really helpful, and it really helped. We saw that she was definitely like, oh, you do want this, and that really helped capture that behavior. Sorry. And we, of course, were able to fade that out pretty quickly, but those initial movements and being able to do a medium-sized jackpot that didn't disrupt and end the session was really helpful.
Well, and that's a good example of an actual jackpot, kind of as opposed to finishing the session with a nice big magnitude. So you're like really using that jackpot to say, boom, yes, that's right there, and they remembered it.
Yeah, they certainly did.
You ready for a species change?
I'm seeing black and white everywhere.
Oh. Oh, don't start playing again. Go to the next one. There we go.
Your mouse is on the wrong screen.
Oh, is that why I couldn't see it?
Yeah.
It's my first time. All right. So Adam just handed me this little video this morning, and for the first time in a while, I got to see otter training yesterday. Now Liz is back and on otter training, and I was really excited with what I saw. It's progressing so nicely, and it is nice to not have, I don't know, again, like maybe only 35 or so otters running around in past decades, times, years. So it's just six of them?
total, yeah.
6 of them, which is still a lot of otter energy. But it fit in with the targeting. So I just wanted to show you this super cool behavior.
On our side.
Using the target to teach a rollover and show the belly and, oh my God, look at the feet.
I'm sorry. Actually, we were at the same time.
Yeah, true. And they're also desensitizing to shaving. So that's an electric shaver, or a battery shaver. And just doing some touch on the non-sharp pointy end. And what Adam was telling me is that they get some abrasions on their foot pads. So this rollover behavior not only facilitates looking at the belly, but also you're able to check their foot pads, and I guess if they have any problem, you could apply some examination.
I think this is the best skill I've ever seen in otter.
Probably. Tula, I think?
Yeah, more like it.
One of the kids, yeah.
What are you feeding her as a reward?
Ish.
That's her morning diet.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, just, that was kind of the continuation of talking about targets, and then for the rest of the time, I thought we would look at stationing. And one of the things that I guess I wanted to throw out there as a topic for conversation is, what does a station mean to you? And the reason I say that, and I think I kind of mentioned this yesterday, is a lot of our Tier 1 behaviors include stationing. And so, what does that really mean?
Whatever you need it to mean.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we do want to really think about, because, like I said yesterday, it's on Tier 1, we've got to train it, but what does it mean? I think we want to think about if we really need station to be a physical, tangible thing that the animal holds onto or touches, or does station mean a location, or, what does it mean? So not getting so locked into the, we've got something hanging on the cage front that's their station, check, done. because you may need a different type of station. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there and then look at a couple of videos of effective station use. And I think I kind of mentioned yesterday about the baboon, which I didn't have, oh, maybe I do have one video. I can't remember now because I'm doing it kind of last minute. But anyway, well, let's just take a look at one type of station. But does anybody else have any comments or thoughts on stations and how you use them? Or questions or whatever?
I've used stations in previous situations as a way for the animal to communicate with me at the beginning of the session if it wants to do something. And this is mostly because it was like work with program animals. So the very first thing we would do is send the animal to its station. It was a physical location in the enclosure away from the door. And if they went to the station, they knew that I'm coming in, we're doing something. If they didn't go to their station, it was something was up. And I wouldn't go in and do anything with the animal because the animal wasn't saying like, yeah, come on in and feed me now or something like that. So that was one way that we used a station. And we could send it to the station randomly, but pretty much every session began with, go to that particular spot in your enclosure. And that's your agreement to, now we're coming in and doing something big or small. And then the other way that I envision station usage, I don't know if I've actually ever used it, except maybe with my dog at home, is just kind of a place to sit stay, or some sort of stay. So you go over there to that thing, or wherever, so I can go over here and do this. Work with a different animal, get your food bowl ready, whatever. And so those are kind of the two things that I think I would use a station concept for, or that I have.
For Sarah.
I just had a question, because I've always personally used and thought of an experienced day station as a, square or circle of some sort that the animal plopped itself onto and stayed there. And that's what I've seen at other zoos. This was the first zoo that I've seen you guys, like some of the lemurs and some of the other primates hold on to something, like a Shia would hold on to something on the bars and stuff. Is that common for primates? I just have never seen that in any other zoo.
It's not uncommon. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if the holding on to something was like an open zoo thing or if that was a good practice of stationing.
Yeah.
You're talking about the lemurs. I had them sit on they have the little square pads, and then they have a little ball, what they did. But I did it because they are very grabby, and they wanted to hold on to everything, like, oh, that, anything you put around them or you put your hand up, they wanted to go to it. So I just focused on them. Just sit here, and it's really hard for them because they're a lemur. Sit here and hold this ball. That's like all you have to do right now. And so for me, that was a way to have them be able to focus on holding because they want to hold. And if you think lemurs' natural behavior to get food is to grab the branch and bring the whole branch to their face and eat the fruit off. They don't pick it. So they like to hold things and grab things because then food will come because they're holding and grabbing. So that seemed to work really well with them. Not sure about the other monkeys that were doing it. But I know that's why. I just wanted them to just be calm and sit and hold this. And then they got all their things that they needed, holding something and feed. So.
I think too it's situational because we still do that. But like in the night house, if I need to work with Whittaker in a small space, I can, which is the male, I can ask 3 females to go over to their station and they'll hang out. But then I still use the mat, and then the mat is more just like, I want you around this space, but then doesn't necessarily have to be hanging out on it. And I think it's different for each type of lemur group because Dern, where she's very aggressive when there's food in there and you just started going back in with her, she now knows that, hey, if she's around this space, the way we traditionally trained it too is I wanted them at the ball and we're kind of starting to phase it out a little bit more that it's around this space. So I think it's situational and it's depending upon which lemur you're working with.
Ooh, lots of hands up, Stacey.
So I also think of it as, when you want to do, you maybe have some interference. So like she said, cooperative feeding or something, hey, let me work with this, go over here. And at home, I have many cats, And I have one bad boy, Roger, that sometimes chases one of the submissive ones. And cats, as we kind of know, don't respond super well to punishment and scolding. They just are like, oh no, I'll just chase him again now. And so he actually has this silly little boat that like, it's just a palm frond, but he sits in it. And when he's looking like he's gonna chase, he actually knows the cue, like, go to the boat. And he goes and he sits in this little boat and he gets reinforced for doing it. And so it's kind of a redirection stimulus too, in that way where it's like, I really want to chase and be bad, but I could also just go to my boat and sit. And it doesn't work 100% of the time, but it's a go sit and choose a different option.
Yeah, there were a couple, did both of y'all have hands up back there?
Yeah.
Oh, so-
I'll wait. You go.
Okay.
We've used stations several years ago. We were having social problems with the eland, and shifting was really difficult. It was like 45-minute shifts to get 4 animals in. So one of our solutions was stationing our male at his physical station at a hatch on the exhibit, very close to the door, but not in the doorway. So he would station there and we would shift the females past him. So in that situation, we used it so that we could fluidly get a shift and kind of put the dominant male out of the way, allowing the less dominant animals to come in.
My experience was somewhat similar to Leslie's with program animals in that it was an area in their enclosure where they had to go, and a lot of times it was platforms. So like Serval had his platform, our lemurs had their separate platforms, and it was like, all right, everybody go to their stations, and that was usually like the cue of a session, not necessarily we're gonna go in and clean or anything like that.
Just the beginning of a session.
Yeah, we weren't necessarily free contact with all of our animals, but we also had like indoor and outdoor exhibits, and even their outdoor exhibits had specific areas out there with like, okay, this is also your station. But if we were in there with them, they also had like their marks, which I guess is just a movable station really. So that's, I don't really know. I mean, do you know what like the difference between marks and stations? I don't know that there is a huge difference.
One starts with an M and one starts with an S. I mean, it's functionally.
Functionally the same thing, yeah. Okay, so we kind of utilize both of those in different ways. Marks were movable and stations were stationary. There you go. And then I've also used them how we use them here, where we kind of hang them on the outside and expect them to go hang out for that. But I guess those are also somewhat movable. But my experience with stations.
I see stations as usefulness in terms of holding an animal in an area, be it because you've got multiples or because you need a monkey to stay while you open and close a door or things like that. So I see their general purpose as be in this location and stay in this location until told otherwise, whether you're working them there or not, is my general understanding of the function of a station. And in terms of what that is, I think varies greatly based on your species, your individual, and your goal. Because you can't really have a hand station if you need them to use their hands. You can't have a body station if it's an animal that needs to be up in the air for some reason. So it makes it very difficult, but it can be anything.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a good summary. You know, what we heard a lot in the discussion was purpose, so why you want to use a station, and I think that really does drive and direct what kind of station you use. If you're using it as a stay here, it may be a location, it may be a physical, tangible thing that you put there, or a stump that the animal sits on, or something like that. If you are looking to train an incompatible behavior, like was described with the lemurs, their hands are grabbing and doing things, so we teach them to hold on to that target ball. It stations their body, but it also is incompatible with the naughty little monkey hands getting into other things. So it's all that, you know, and if you think about the things that we use targets to do, movement and holding still. So it really all fits within that context. I mean, a station is a target. It's a point of reference that the animal moves towards, and then they stay there. Whether it's a movable target, or a target that's a location, or a spot that's painted on the wall and is always there. It's still that same point of reference. So, you know, that's why I just sort of consider them all stations. And then how you use it, what your purpose is, will help drive what type of station it is. And you don't just have to have one. You know, you can have the kind that clips on the wall, you can have, or on the mesh, you can have a dot spray painted on the wall, and you can have a mat on the floor. So you don't feel like, oh, because we've trained this one kind, we can't train another kind. I mean, you can train whatever you need. That's the beauty of it, is that it is very flexible and fluid, and it's just all that concept of going towards something that will generalize. Yes?
Oh, I just had a comment. I had a similar experience to what Jessica was saying with kudu, if we station them on the side, because the giraffe exhibit in the night house is, if it's open, then the kudu could also go into the giraffe barn, and we didn't want that, so we stationed them outside on the fence line. But when we got a new kudu, he was very flighty. So, and then the other issue is once you shift down, you can't see the top side of the exhibit. So if the other kudu would shift down, he would kind of go into panic mode. So by stationing them out on the exhibit right next to the shift door, he was able to kind of figure out, oh, there are my people right there.
So you helped a fearful animal by using stationing. Awesome. Okay, well, we have about 15 minutes left. We can just take a look at this video. So you can see the little hanging target, and the objective is for Ashia to touch the target. And is she holding on to it at this point? I mean, was that part of the objective, or just to touch it? So she just has to go to it, touch it, and, okay. And so what this is facilitating, the purpose of this is to begin putting her in a location and then operating doors with the objective of moving towards the chute. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
And that location I picked because she's facing the door, so she could see it clearly from where she was. She did not understand the relationship between I move these handles and the door moves, and so she had to learn this handle means this door. And you're not going to die.
So did everybody hear that? Okay.
And we used the station because we tried teaching her a target and spent I personally, among many other trainers, spent 5 to 10 sessions trying to desensitize her to a target. She's afraid of targets.
Like a stick target?
Yeah, any movement coming towards her is terrifying. I also think it's not related to the station, but it's related to the flexibility of what Virginia did to work with Ashia. We noticed she's using good as her bridge because Ashia was afraid of both the whistle and the clicker. And so Virginia created this, anything to be the bridge, something that was distinct from the environment, but not something that she was afraid of. So it was being really sensitive to the animal. Ashia is fearful. I cannot take credit for that. Somebody else came up with that bridge. But she's not afraid of a whistle anymore. Oh,
Okay, and then now moving into the chute. So you can see the station's just been clipped on there, just barely inside the chute.
Door.
So the criteria here is move in, touch the station, but she doesn't have to hold at station. She just has to stay in front of it while the door's operated, and then touch the station again is a way, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, is a way that I'm interpreting to say, oh yep, she's still comfortable. Not only does she stay while the door closed, but she's willing to touch that station and remain in that space. And you can see she's moved pretty far into the chute now. And then the station for the lock-in.
Door. Door.
The whole apricot for that.
Oh, yeah. It's hard to tell from here. Excellent jackpot. So she got a whole apricot for that.
Virginia, was there, from what I could tell, the first station you did outside of the chute, was there a reason you did that instead of just facing her in the middle? Was she just too fearful of the doors?
Yes, I wanted her to have as much distance as she wanted for the first door going in, because I don't care how far away she is from that first door going in.
Okay.
And also, when I first trained that door going down, in that position, she's facing it, and so she can see both me at the handle, and she can see the door.
And that's a really critical part of it, is that she sees and understands everything that was happening. So it was really nice the facility allowed you to do that.
Was there any issue with the distance of the guillotine poles from the actual chute? As far as dropping a guillotine or approaching her to reinforce, and she's wanting to go away from the door, anything like that, where you wanted to open the door?
What is not reflected in this series of videos is I actually started closing doors 2 stalls away from her. And so the distance was there from the beginning.
Got it.
So she's 2 stalls away, she can see me and the door, and then the door moves, and then I walk over to her and give her her remote.
And was it with her, or was it in the Verb at Night house where you actually even had doors closed between her and the one you were operating? So there was sort of no threat.
Don't recall that.
Maybe it was in the Night house, because it was that same thing, you had to go all the way away to operate the door.
It was door E. You're done.
She still goes back to that with me, like, because she and I don't have as much of a relationship. So, like, she'll still go back to that moving 2 stalls over whenever I use the door.
Okay, so this is the last station video, and nice, calm, little scared monkeys. Excitable little boys. This is Milo, one of the subadult male hamadryas, and he's the most subordinate of the two boys, so he's kind of nervous, very energetic, so you can see just that the context of working with an animal like this is really different. But the station target is, you know, obviously hanging right there. He's trained to touch it. He's not to the point of holding on to it for very long yet.
2 hands.
But he does have 2 hands, okay.
Quickly, but he'll hold on to it longer with one.
So kind of where are you going with this
2
behavior?
hands holding it.
And I think I mentioned this yesterday too, you know, there's, again, 300 or so baboons in there. And they all line up along the fence line, they all go to their specific location. And he always goes to this location. You see the plywood there is a bit of a visual barrier to make him feel safe because he is a subordinate animal and would get displaced. So this just kind of increased safety. So there's a lot of these visual screens along the fence line, which has really helped them stay in their location. And in this case, the thing that they go to and stay for the training session is really that location. So the location has become their station. So in this case, the target that's hanging is not necessarily with the purpose of saying, go here. It's more the keep the busy monkey hands, doing something positive rather than interfering with things.
I think we just naturally called it a station. That's what
Mhm.
we like to
Same
think
hand
of,
station, yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But it's not really that.
So those are the videos that, thank you Adam for getting them to me, because yesterday we couldn't look at any of the Oakland Zoo videos, so it was really nice to be able to use those to talk about and share, and thank you everybody for sharing your experiences. Any other comments on stationing? I just, again, just kind of wanted to throw all this out there as, thinking about broadening our way of thinking about targets and stationing again, and what it means.
If anyone is interested, what String 9 has started doing, because Alicia was amazing with taking videos of everything, is we made a team YouTube account, so we could all record our sessions, upload them as a non-open to the public, so you have to share the links for people to view them. So it's a really good way to share them with your team, so you can take videos and keep everyone up to date, and then share them with Margaret later. So if anyone needs help, I'm sure Adam knows how to do that too, but it was a really helpful tool to use.
And Amber knows how to do it, so she can help you too.
That's why I said also Adam.
Yeah, myself and Adam could potentially help anybody get that set up if you'd like to for your training teams or sections or whatever. But it's really good.
And we do have multiple video cameras around the apartment too. The one that's recording these sessions is mine is in my office. I keep a GoPro in my office as well, pretty much all times. And then there's a department video camera as well. So if you guys do ever want to record video sessions, there are resources up the zoo for you guys to utilize.